Welcome to the Mental Health Boot Camp podcast.
Woo!
the, the podcast where 4 psychotherapists, 3 of us from Canada, 1 of us from the United States, serve you cutting-edge mental health knowledge. I am Ryan Howes, a psychologist from Pasadena, California.
I am Brooke Lewis from Vancouver, Canada.
I'm Chris Boyd for Vancouver, and today, Joanna, my sister, is not here, so the old man is back. Psychologist from Vancouver, Denis Boyd.
Good to be here.
Oh, so good to have you here, Dennis. Thanks for filling in last minute.
There you are.
I'm thankful for you, which is appropriate because it's Thanksgiving here in the United States, even though you guys had your Thanksgiving like 4 months ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
Felt like 4 months ago, that's for sure.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
So how did it go, Ryan? How did it go?
I'll tell you, Thanksgiving was good for us, for my family. It was pretty small. The recommendations down here are to keep things pretty small, no big gatherings. So it was just the 4 of us. Instead of a full turkey, we just had a turkey breast this year. We had way too much food anyway. All the green beans and the mashed potato. I made so much mashed potatoes I could last us for months, I think. And there's still so much pie left. We have an apple pie and a pumpkin pie. I wish I could share it with you guys. Very, very, very good.
Oh,
Right.
that's great. So, Ryan, up here, we have a tradition, sort of, or some people up here have this tradition for Thanksgiving or Christmas or both, which is like crackers, table crackers. So not the crackers you eat, but they're like paper wrapped little gifts where they have a string that you pull and it makes a pop sound. And then inside is like a little trinket and a joke of some sort or a riddle, typically, and a paper hat. And then you have to put the paper hat on. Do you guys do that?
No. So okay, hold on. Crackers,
It's called crackers.
but it's not edible. It's a cracker because it makes a cracking sound. Is that what it is?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but there's like a gift inside, and it's also a hat.
It's a paper crown. It's a paper crown you put on, and there's a different toy or trinket in each one. So everyone has like a variety of things, like little playing cards, or I don't know.
Nail clippers,
Wow.
pens, I don't know, all kinds of stuff.
It must be a British thing, eh? It must be a British thing.
Dennis, do you know?
I think it might be, although I've seen them I remember them even as a kid here, growing up here in Canada. But the big elaborate ones with it's like a container with 2 little ends you pull. They're quite neat. That's very British, I think.
Oh my goodness. We don't do that down here. I'm not, at least not that I'm aware of, unless there's some Canadian transplants down here. But wow, that sounds, so it's just something you do while you're eating, or something while you're just kind of visiting?
No, before you eat.
Before,
Okay.
And you cross arms so that you pull each other's crackers, kind of.
What?
Like one end and one end, or some people do that. My family
Okay.
often like cross crackers and it helps pull, and then they all go crack, crack, crack. And then you have to put your paper crown on while you eat.
Oh
And they're all
my.
different colors. So they're like purple and yellow and green and these little paper crowns.
Oh my. So this is kind of what kicks off the party then. All right, everybody. We're rolling now because the crackers are out.
Right.
Someone pulled out
It's
the
like
crackers. It's time for the party.
part of your place setting is your party is your cracker. Oh
I'm sure
yeah,
you
there's
see
a
that,
photo
but
of what they look like.
Okay, it's just like a round tube.
Yeah.
With
Yeah.
like candy ends like that you would pull off. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that sounds great. I would love to participate in that. It sounds like a lot of fun. And so do people stock up on the crackers like a few weeks before each of these holidays? And
Some do.
yeah.
If you leave it too late, you don't get them because they're sold out. So,
Yeah.
yeah, they're
But
very
widely available at all the stores, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then
Wow.
people buy from specific stores because they might want like what's in like Costco's little trinkets are different from the
Yeah.
trinkets you're going to get at Safeway,
The Costco ones are better, I think.
And the paper hats are better. They last a little longer.
Yeah.
Wow. Well,
Very-
just to make as if the holiday wasn't special enough, you add crackers to the mix, and it just becomes that much more magical, huh?
Yeah.
You're getting cracked up, Ryan, about this. It's
I am. It seems really funny. I'm sure there must be a rich tradition to this that I don't quite understand, but
I
it's.
don't think any of us do. None of us really understand, but you get like yelled at if you don't put your paper crown on. Like
That's
it's
right.
part of the deal.
Wow.
And the cheesy jokes, right?
And the super
really
cheesy
makes it.
jokes. Yeah.
Wow. Well, that sounds great. The only place we have the paper crowns is really at Burger King, so I don't know.
Yeah.
And there's no special occasion for that.
Yeah. Now,
Wow.
Dennis's family had a good one. It was a cracker set with the little whistles.
Oh yeah.
Wasn't
this
that a
is
cracker set?
extra special set, had whistles, and the more you pay for the crackers, the better the goodies.
Yeah. So these
then we
little
had-
whistles came with like sheet music.
Right.
Each whistle has a number on it, and then it tells you what number to blow. And so you have to like point and it's a hoot.
It was good.
I think that sounds really, really wonderful. I'm not sure what to make of it, but if it makes it that much more fun for the holidays, I'm all for it.
There you are.
Yeah.
Let's export that down here. We would love to have that next holiday season.
Taking note.
Yes, of course. I think it's maybe an untapped market in the United States. That'd be great.
Potential.
I could be the U.S. distributor of crackers, and who knows, make billions that way.
That's great. Mental health boot camp. We do online programs and Christmas crackers in the United States.
That's
It's a
what
pretty
we're
good
known
business model.
And we also sell the Ugly Christmas Sweater Rebellion books here. I got my copy this week. It's amazing. Great story, heartwarming, wonderful illustrations. So this is the book that Chris put together. If you heard our podcast last week, we talked about it a bit. But really wonderful artwork and a beautiful story. So Ugly Christmas Sweater Rebellion in bookstores now.
I appreciate that. Thanks.
Absolutely.
Thanks for the plug.
Love it. Love it. Okay. So on this holiday evening, for me at least, a crackerless holiday evening, I would I can't help but notice that Joe is not here. Your dad is here. And Joe was supposed to be the one who did the ambush tonight, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So does that mean that we get to have a Dennis ambush tonight?
You do. I tried to send it to you. Did it arrive?
I don't have anything at this point. No. Okay. Oh, wait a second. Yes, I do have it. It's right here. Sorry, I saw it right now. Okay.
You block his number or something like that?
I didn't block his number. I didn't recognize his number, of course, because we've never texted before. But now I have it. We are all set to go. The ambush, where one person knows what the topic is, the other three of us do not. This is Dennis's topic for the evening. You guys ready?
Oh, before we do, I got to ask, Dennis, is it yours or is it Joanna's that you're sharing?
Joanna was really good and said it's up to me. I could do what I want. So I came up with one. I told her about it, and then she said, "I think I can think of a better one." And so I more or less got to choose it, but it's sort of a combined effort.
Okay.
Okay. Well, that's good. The best the Boyd family has to offer. Sorry, Chris. Okay, here we go. Here's the topic: relationships and COVID. How are relationships doing in the midst of COVID? Marriages, families, and parenting. And discuss some strategies that people might use. So relationships and COVID. The pandemic, has it made an impact on relationships? Or is everything just fine? Nothing to worry about here. It's just a viral thing. There's really not impacting relationships at all. Next topic, right?
There you are.
Okay.
What do you think, Chris?
Based on my experience, absolutely, it has impacted the relationships, and I find that I'm hearing some great feedback from clients and friends and family members. I'm also hearing some some not so good feedback as well. So I think in a lot of ways it's strengthened relationships, and in others it's caused a lot of distress as families have had to adjust and maybe spending more time together and have had to find new ways to cope with the circumstances of today.
Yes. So how do you think it has strengthened, Chris? How do you think, what do you think has been the plus for some of the people you've spoken with?
I think it kind of goes back to that work-life balance a bit. Sometimes we get so busy with work and our social obligations and hobbies and interests that maybe people weren't putting the time and energy into the relationships that matter the most in their lives. So I think COVID kind of adjusted that for people and allowed couples and families to connect, to put that time aside and maybe spend more quality time together playing games and whatnot. So yeah, so one way, obviously an obvious one, is it created a space and place to make that more or a priority, as it should be a priority, but it's kind of highlighted that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, on that sort of, well, not really that note, but how it might have improved as well is in a backwards way. I think when the shutdowns are happening, there was a lot of stress, obviously, but it also took away a lot of things. So a lot of things that would normally distract us, extracurricular activities, or if everybody was off work or working from home and all these different things, which for some of, I don't work with couples, but I do work with adults. I work with teens, so then the parents. And it seemed like, some families, there was increased conflict at that time, but it was good because all those other things were actually causing avoidance of the issues that needed to be addressed. And so then some of those families were able to actually work on those issues and strengthen as families and partnerships, and other ones weren't able to work through those. But I think it gave the space to actually put the spotlight on it for a lot of people.
So you're saying there may be underlying issues that weren't being addressed. Now they finally had to, they couldn't run from it any longer. They had to finally face these things.
It was there, yeah, and you had to, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which in the long run is going to actually make those relationships stronger.
Great points. Great points. Sure.
What do you think, Dennis?
A couple of thoughts. So when it first happened, some of the families I work with were having a great time. It was like a special holiday. The novelty lasted a couple of weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, and then it started to fade, and those pressures that you were talking about started to show up. I think the problem with that is that some couples have done really well, but there's a whole bunch that aren't doing as well because they don't have the skill set, or they don't really know how to connect or how to avoid power struggles. Like when you look at divorce literature, one of the reasons divorces happen is power struggles. And if couples don't know how to not power struggle, they're going to have some doozies because the pressure's on. So I think there are couples that are struggling a bit more than they might otherwise, but there's ways. We'll talk strategies. There's some things they can do to help with that, but I think the pressure's on marriages in particular.
Dennis, what do you think it is about COVID and the time that people are spending with one another that's highlighting the power struggle? Why do you think that brings it to the surface?
Well, couples by definition, generally, you think of your own relationship and those your parents and whatnot, are similar in a few ways and very different in lots. And so you'll have a planner and a spontaneous person, and you'll have a morning person and a night person, a sloppy person and a neat person. So they have different priorities, and so they have different ways of doing things. And they start getting irritated with each other and not finding that common ground, And if they know how to find common ground, they'll do really well. And if they don't, and some couples are doing swimmingly, they're doing really well. And others, I think, there was something in the paper the other day about a woman who died this week from family violence. And she's this young mother holding her child. And I'm hoping that's not happening too much. But one of my clients is a female police officer, and she said they're getting more calls for domestic stuff than they did long before. So I think it's escalating for some families.
Certainly, yes.
And then with that, it trickles down, right? So
yeah,
the stress from the parents, it'll trickle down through the family and into the kids and those relationships. And that's on a household level, but I'm sure if we were to think on a macro level, that might be happening as well in different communities and whatnot. Like the state of our governments or the world and COVID and the leaders trickling down into the businesses, job
Yeah.
security, finances, put stress on the parents, which then comes down to the children. And
Yeah. I don't think it's any accident that, Ryan, up here, the government's trying really hard to keep the schools open. And they'll only shut a school down if there's a lot of COVID showing up there. And they're doing that to keep those kids out of the home with their peers. Because at home, the kids love being with their parents. There's no doubt about that. But then they're missing their peer group. So I think they're losing out. And so there's that big emphasis on trying to get them out there and hang out in their schools, and at the last resort, close them down.
I was just talking with my kids today about the fact that their last day of school was Friday, March 13th. That was the last time they were in their classroom, which is so long ago. Long ago. Yeah. And they miss their friends. They when times were a little bit better than they are now, they were able to do some like distance, like bike ride visits with some friends and things like that. But really right now they're not seeing any friends at all. Playing some games and stuff online with their friends. But I noticed that deficit is so massive when it comes to the peer group and just how kids are missing out on that.
Yeah.
I've also noticed, since this is a question just about relationships in general, that that friendships are also, I was asked to give a quote to an article recently about, is it okay to kind of pare down your friendships during this time? Or, do you have to attend every Zoom friendship gathering, or can you step back once in a while? Those sorts of things. Mm-hmm. And it's really about self-awareness and what's really going to work best for you. But I know that there are some folks who have noticed during this time that, they really just need to kind of keep a tight group, and they don't have a whole lot of extra energy for the second and third ring of friendships out there that they might have. And just in order to provide the best self-care for themselves, they might have to put a hold on some of those until times are better. Which, again, I think that goes back to just knowing yourself and asserting yourself and saying, you know what, I can't give any more right now. I've done enough. Got to call it quits for the night.
Yeah.
So when it comes to, again, the downsides, I mean, I certainly, if there's a rise in domestic violence, that's horrific. And if the even in the healthier relationships, if the defense mechanisms that people used to have, or the ways to kind of politely avoid some of the issues, have been taken away because people are spending so much time together. Let's talk about strategies a bit. What do you think people can do to I guess address these issues constructively, or to find some breathing room here so that we're not at each other's throats? I mean, this is 8 months of cabin fever a lot of people are dealing with.
Mm-hmm. For sure. I think building awareness of the communication style within the relationship, if we focus on that aspect of it, is important. So sometimes people are really good at conveying what their needs are. Some people are a little more passive in terms of their needs, and that can lead to some pretty significant issues. So, obviously my dad is here, but he often mentions he talks about what were your parents' communication styles like, and again, stepping back a bit and looking at those tendencies, right? Because how do you change something if you're not aware of what it consists of?
The problem with that, the challenge with that, Chris, is that I think couples are generally really aware of the other person's communication abilities or lack thereof, and they don't have much insight as to their own. And if they would listen to each other, they would gain insight as to their own, because the other spouse will give them some feedback. Like I often say to couples, if you want to assess how good a listener you are, ask your spouse, because you may think you're a really good, or good friend, you may think you're a really good listener, but she or he's the one that'll tell you whether you're a listener or not. So if I were to promote one concept to study or look at, it would be how to listen better, especially with empathy.
How do you listen with empathy, Dennis? We got time. Tell me about it.
Well, listen, do we have that much time?
We got time. We got a little time.
One thing I could tell you, I really like the emotionally focused therapies, as Brooke and Chris will know. When somebody says something ridiculous, weird, bizarre, nutty, outrageous, there's always a feeling lurking in the weeds. And a good listener will hear the feeling and not necessarily get hooked by the words that are being said. And with the child, it's not too bad. If the kid says, you're the worst parent in the world, I'd rather trade you in, you don't go away feeling you're the worst parent in the world. You say, I got a tired kid here. I got a kid who's mad at me right now. And so empathy is hearing the feeling underneath the nonsense sometimes, and trying to just acknowledge it. You don't have to agree with it. So I spent a lot of time trying to help couples hear each other.
Is that I know that some couples get into trouble when they start to try to mind read or expect their partner to mind read, right? Like, I say this, but what I really mean is that. I think what you're talking about has a little different nuance than that, doesn't it?
Yeah, hopefully it'll be a little clearer. I mean, checking out your assumption, you could be right on, but I mean, Chris, you and Brooke have had a few conversations. How does it go between the two of you as good friends?
Mm-hmm.
Just thought I'd ask. Because it's an ongoing challenge for friends as well as married couples.
Sure.
You know, it's we have our different styles, but
Yeah.
You know,
I think it's also different when you're friends with therapists.
mm-hmm.
Like the conversations that I can have with anyone here tonight, Joanna, anyone at the office, it is a different conversation than even when you're having a more raw or open or vulnerable conversation to when I have them with my old high school friends. Sure, they might be good at empathy. They might be able to name an emotion here or there, but I think obviously we are more trained at listening, so it's different.
Yeah. I think we prioritize within our friendship just that connecting time, or the talk time, or tea time, I think is what you would refer to it as, pops. And so, and also what we've noticed lately is trying to put the devices away, put the phones away, because
Huge.
you can't fully listen to someone and be on your phone at the same time, right? So we've caught ourselves sometimes chatting, but as well as texting, and we've been trying to shift that. But yeah, during that talk time, talk about the day and things that took place. And luckily, as therapists, we can debrief maybe some sessions we had and what we kind of learned from that. So some highlights and challenges throughout the day. So I think that's important. But it is an ongoing. It's an evolving process, I guess.
Ryan, this talk time is a strategy I probably give every couple I work with. And I remember when I first came up with the idea, I called it daily talk time, and I brought it home to Maureen, and she literally went, she wasn't too impressed with the idea. And I said, why? She said, leave the psychology at work. I don't, I said, it sounds like you're frustrated with me. And so I just said, you want a cup of tea? And she said, sure. And so we'd sit down, have a cup of tea for 15, 20 minutes, and we would do this talk time. And it starts off with just, where you at? How are you doing? Trying to hear the mood of the other person, and then do business, and we're done, So that little connection time each day is magical for couples. If they haven't been doing it and they start doing it, they rediscover each other. It's wonderful to see. They get that spark back, and then they have to learn to do some business together. But it's a good place to start.
It sounds like you're talking about some intentionality, some being really purposeful about this and saying, you know what, I'm not, instead of just trying to kind of bump up against each other and run against each other in the hall and, oh, hey, did you remember to do this? You're saying, let's actually sit down and really intentionally have a conversation. Like you're saying, it doesn't have to be too much. 15, 20 minutes is all it takes.
Yeah. Very intentional. In fact, I get them to schedule it, and they think that's a bit artificial, but these couples with young kids, I mean, you're very, very busy people. Sure. And if you don't get that time, you'll drift apart. I mean, Bob Dylan wrote this great song. The lyric was, we're busy being born or busy dying. And he could have been writing about marriage or friendship in general. We either take care of it or it drifts apart on us. So, yeah, very intentional.
Sure. And also listening to understand and not listening to respond, right? Because sometimes you're caught up in your mind just thinking of what you want to say, but it's not about you in that moment. It's about trying to really understand, mention the emotion, right? Just don't focus always on the words. Like, it's the intonation and the tone and then what's underneath that, right? That matters so much.
Now, on top of all of that, I know that you guys are talking about relationships and friendships, but I think a lot of these principles apply to parents and children, or teenagers at least, like working with teens. They try and pull away a lot, but they actually really want that connection with their parents, but they want it to be that they're understood, because they're in that phase where they're not children anymore. They don't want to be spoken to like children. They want their parent to talk to them more like an adult. They want their opinion shared and to be validated, to have a conversation. And so I think it's important for parents to take some of that initiative with their children too.
Good point. Yeah.
Yeah, and then with the teenagers too, like sometimes parents get so caught up with the chores and the homework and all the expectations, but just generate dialogue and focus on what maybe they want to discuss. I think any moments of connection is beneficial during this time with the teenager.
I agree. I don't have teenagers yet. My kids are preteens, but I definitely need to be intentional with them and focus in on their needs. And I find that the best strategy I can muster with my kids is just curiosity, and recognizing that they may shuck and jive. They may not want to go there at this moment, but I figured that it's a win, even if they know that I'm curious, even if we don't end up having the full conversation, if they know that I'm interested in them and I want to talk to them and want to know more about them, then that's still a win,
Huge.
Yeah, that and Ryan, you're opening the door of conversations. Like, so if you're bringing up a topic that they maybe are uncomfortable about or don't want to talk about quite yet, whatnot, but by you bringing it up makes it okay for them to talk about it later.
Yeah.
You're already welcoming that. So I think it's so important that you're already doing that with the boys.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, I think that's true. I hope so. I hope it's laying a groundwork that they know that Dad's willing to talk and ready when they are, And I'm also not gonna browbeat them if they're not. I'm not gonna pester them. I don't want that dynamic to get in place either.
Yeah. It's interesting. I incorporate a lot of pop culture into the therapeutic work that I do. But yeah, fostering curiosity is so important. But when you talk about a child's preferences, you're interested in it because they're interested in it. And there's so much to it. And if they can educate you a bit in terms of their favorite Pokemon character and why, or what they like to do in Minecraft, if they do survival mode or creative mode, and what kind of stuff are they working on? Like there's an endless conversations that can take place, and preferences, and doing a bit of research on those topics yourself, so you kind of know what questions to ask, can really enhance that connection and attachment with your kids.
That works really well with couples too. I remember a couple that were repairing their marriage and were doing quite well. I said, so what do you do for fun? And they said, well, we go to concerts. And I said, well, that's fun. What do you go to? Well, he goes to the opera and I go to country and rock concerts. I said, well, who do you go with? Well, we'll go with our friends. Oh, why don't you go together? Well, we don't like each other's music. I said, you're missing the point. It's not about the music. It's about being together. Hadn't even occurred to them that point Chris made about let's stretch into our kids' preferences. Let's do that with our spouses too. But I want to add one other thing. I don't know whether it's happening with you, Ryan, but in our neighborhoods, a lot of people are getting out for walks. Their whole family is walking out there, and that's a really nice way, right, for families to interact.
Absolutely. We had a great walk after the turkey, before the pie tonight. We had a nice walked the dog around a few blocks, and it was great. Saw a bunch of people out there. Everyone's masked up, which is good. But yes, I think walking. There's this renaissance of walking happening in the world. I hope it's pretty nice.
Yeah, some amazing conversations happen when you're walking, right?
Oh yeah.
Okay. It's irritating though. We used to have the neighborhood to ourselves when we were walking. We could walk anywhere, nobody around. We didn't have to go out on the road to dodge people. Now we're dodging people and this and that. But we get to say hello to a lot of people, which is nice. So it makes the walk a little more special.
Sounds like a Seinfeld episode there.
Oh, totally, right?
Brooke, what are you saying?
Parade here, Dennis. I have like the parade that comes by the house, so I know everyone's walk schedules. And my favorite, there's a gal that walks by at about 8 a.m. And she just is a bundle of joy. She's middle-aged, maybe probably more senior aged, but very, like, she always has a big smile on her face and her posture is really open, and she's typically moving her arms all around and
Wow.
smiling and just at a good pace, and she just looks very joyous. So one of these days I'm going to run out and join her.
Tomorrow morning, go for it.
Right.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Hey, you never know. You might not
Yeah,
ever have a chance. That's great. Yeah, you've been mentioning that for a long time, Brooke. I remember several months ago you talking about the fact that you were kind of getting, there's that interesting sort of friendship space where you kind of know them and you kind of can interact like, yeah, we know each other, but you haven't like introduced yourself with names and all of that quite yet.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's a big part of the walking culture, I think, right now.
Yeah, as people walk by, so if I'm sitting out on the deck now, I can, there's waving and talking to the dogs or whatever. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
So let's bring it back to the relationship stuff here. So we've talked about, like, okay, let's say that you're feeling a little bit of stress in COVID and kind of the cabin fever, and we talked about being intentional and trying to help facilitate conversation and finding ways to be curious and all of that stuff. But I'm curious. I mean, Dennis, you're more of a couples guy. What about when people really are having some difficulties and they're having some significant challenges? They're realizing, wow, I'm not enjoying this at all, and I feel stuck. There's nowhere I can go, or gosh, I'm finding out things about my spouse that I really I don't like. Is there anything people can do if they're in that situation right now?
It's a bit of a pressure cooker, I think, that you're describing there. And I don't think you have to look too far to find some suggestions on how to be creative with this experience. And I was just looking at an article, and there's something called the Happiness Institute, and a little article in the paper talking about getting out of the house on your own, going out and chopping wood or doing something that has some purpose to it, get a bit of exercise. I think people can be creative in building in space for themselves. We have a fairly large house where we raised a family here, and we've been spending time in different rooms that we normally don't spend time in. We're not always in the same room at the same time, or I'll watch a show and she'll play, do something else. So I think we can be creative and give each other space. That might help a bit.
Okay.
Sure.
That's good.
I was thinking too that I was actually talking to a mother and a teenager today, and trying to neutralize those really intensive moments, because arguments can break out, and before you know it, things can escalate and go off the rails, right? And it's amazing. At a kind of neurological level, the energy is flowing down to the limbic area and more reactive, and sometimes the logic, rationality, empathy, and morality go offline a bit, right? And we say and do some really nasty things. So in that moment, we often educate our clients on how to respond, have a bit of a game plan in that situation. So if a sports team, for instance, is not connecting like they should, the coach or the captain will call that timeout, right? And that's their time to kind of regroup and implement some techniques that can actually calm the body down, right? Before maybe reconnecting and calling that time in and addressing the underlying issues.
There we go.
That works well.
I'll also use this as a moment to say that there's this thing called couples therapy that people can do, and maybe and I'm sure there are many people during this time who have who felt like there were no problems in their relationship, or maybe they were just kind of successfully avoiding the problems, as Brooke was mentioning before, right? And a lot of folks who are probably reaching out to a couples therapy for the first time, and of course, nowadays, a lot of times that's online. Sometimes it's in person, but there's no shame. There's nothing wrong with reaching out and saying, "Hey, we could use a little help here." A little help, kind of facilitating discussions, maybe working through some of these underlying problems, and getting an outsider's perspective, and maybe some tips and tools to help us to make this relationship work a little bit better. So
yeah, big time.
So looking for couples therapy is a common thing, and Dennis is available, right, Dennis?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm not. I'm jammed. I'm hoping Brooke and Chris are going to branch out and do some couples therapy one of these days, although they're jammed too, so I don't know. But you're right. We have a website. Most practices do. Goes by my name, denisboyd.com. And we have 25 years of articles there on marriage, on grief, on parenting. These two have written, I've written. So there's resources like that that can tide you over. And I've sent several people this last week to the mental health boot camp to work through some individual growth that they need to do, because it's such a great program. So there's resources that people can tie into until they can get that professional help they're looking for. But don't be afraid to get a little professional help. And if you don't think it's working for you, go to somebody else. Don't give up on it.
Yeah. There's also a lot of really great books out there. Really, like, so if the idea of going, I think it's a good way to put your toes in the water. You know, if the idea of going to a therapist is a little bit too much right now, maybe you and your spouse could have a little book club and pick one that you both like and read it and talk about it. Maybe, oh, what is that, Dennis? Is that a book that who's the author of that one? Is it you?
Oh, Denis Boyd. Okay, and it's called.
It's a classic.
Let me just get my plug.
No, really.
Marriage Can Be Great. No, really. Tools and tips to be married for life and loving it.
Yeah. I think we're shattering records for plugging our programs and books. Eh?
I know.
That's good.
That's right. That's right.
That's good. No, it's a great book.
I'm surprised the Rotary banner's not behind you right now.
Next time I come on as a guest, I'll do the Rotary thing.
Yeah.
These guys are all big into Rotary, just to let you know. So yes, Denis has a book about marriage, which is a great thing. I haven't read it yet, but I will order it up right away. Anyone else have, you already mentioned emotion-focused therapy. So Sue Johnson's book, Hold Me Tight, is a popular one. Anyone else have any titles they tend to refer to?
Well, the Gottmans.
7 Principles for Making Marriage Work, right?
And then the Gottmans were doing trainings. They were in-person weekends you could go as a couple if you wanted, or as a professional, and they would do a weekend sort of training and teach you essentially how to argue well.
Great.
Because you're gonna have arguments. So how do you argue well? And so I don't know if those have moved online, maybe, but that might be a good resource as well.
Yeah.
There's an old one by, go ahead, Chris.
Oh, I was going to say Gary Chapman, The Love Languages. Have you referred to that quite a bit?
Ah, that's a great one.
Great book. Yeah, very short little book, but it's priceless. It comes up with some really good ideas on how couples can meet each other's needs, because the golden rule, do unto others as you have them do unto you. In marriage, it's different. Do unto others as they want done unto them. And that's Gary Chapman's book really addresses that. Harville Hendricks, no relation to Jimmy, years ago put out a book called How to Get the Love You Want. And it is a great little book. The first part's on old brain, new brain. They can skip that part. The other part, though, has lots of discussion topics to help couples get to know each other better. So Hendricks is still a classic. Good book.
Definitely a classic. I'd also like to, I'll pitch for Stan Tacton. He wrote a book called Wired for Love, which is all about attachment theory and how that applies to relationships.
Good.
Which is a really helpful kind of approach that I've found. Stan Tatkin. And are there any others that I tend to use? That's a good start. We got plenty. I'll put them in the descriptions for the podcast, and people can take a look there and link to it if they want. So there's books, there's therapy, there are these little helpful ideas that we've been trying to mention here about being intentional, about talking to one another, giving each other space, trying to be aware of what the other person needs as opposed to just what we need all the time, right? And then I guess it's worth mentioning here, because you already kind of mentioned domestic violence there, Denis. I mean, if we are talking about a situation where someone is feeling like they're in danger, if it feels like it's an unhealthy and unsafe situation at home, then please, by all means, do reach out for help. Do reach out to to counselors, to doctors, to the authorities if necessary, and do whatever is necessary to keep you and your kids, if you have them, healthy and safe, right?
There are a lot of support services for persons if they're trying to leave abusive relationships. So definitely reach out and ask some questions and ask for in your local area, because there's lots of agencies, there's transition homes, there's support services, there's places where you can get household items for free. There's a lot of support there. They're not always highly advertised, or the advertising has to be a bit sneaky sometimes for the safety of the women. But the professionals will know, and some of it will be online for who you can contact.
That's great. I'll try to link to a couple of those resources too. So,
Yeah.
So wow, gosh, everybody, we covered these relationships. I guess I will say, in the spirit of the day, that I'm thankful to have relationships with the three of you,
Oh,
and
that's nice.
and maybe a little less so with Jo because she's not here. So I'm just kidding.
We'll make sure to pass that along.
Yeah, she'll be happy.
I'm joking, Jo. Very happy to have a relationship with you too. That's it for this evening. Thank you again, Dennis, for pinch hitting again tonight. So love having you with us. It's an honor. So thank you so much.
You're sure welcome.
And that's it for tonight, everybody. Please like and subscribe on Apple, Google, Podbean, or YouTube. Send us your questions if you have them to info@mentalhealthbootcamp.com. Visit us on Facebook or Instagram. Please tell a friend or two, maybe in other countries or other states or provinces. And that's it for tonight, everybody. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Toodles.